Hey, here's Manning here from Locked On Cavs, joined as always by my partner in crime, Evan Dammarell, for this episode of Locked On Cavs. Today we're going to talk about Cavs Thunder and look ahead to Cleveland's weekend games. Also want to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. All right, Evan, let's dive into the game. Obviously, if people are watching this or listening to this on late Friday or Saturday, recording a little bit late due to just some things going on. But Cavs beat the Thunder 129-102.
We can disclose how the sausage is made. I am not as strong as Chris Manning, and my second COVID vaccine really sent me for a loop.
Well, I have not had my second COVID vaccine yet. So
Chris,
we'll find out on Monday.
You're mightier than me, Chris. Just take this moment. I won't admit it often.
That's where we're at. So that's why
the Cavs did. They looked pretty
Oklahoma.
They looked Oklahoma City. They left them thunderstruck, if you will. It was a 129-102 win for the Cavaliers. The Thunder, based on I think Kirk Goldsberry releasing his graphic today, they are the worst defensive and offensive team in the league. But I don't know, man. The Thunder were kind of playing free Thursday night against Cleveland. It was an interesting game for sure. That's like one of my biggest notes is like the Thunder play with no fear. Like they really weirdly formed. Like Poku was 2 of 8 from 3. He finished the night with 10 points, 6 boards, 2 assists, 2 blocks. Like I thought he was making a bigger impact than that, but no, it was all Ty Jerome. Weirdly enough, it was 5 of 9 from 3. Like this is a weirdly constructed Thunder squad. Clearly they might be intentionally tanking, but
they are intentionally tanking. This is the team that is going down in flames
for sure. But the Cavs now are 6th in the lottery standings. Let the great seeding and whether it's playoffs or draft wars begin. A lot of hand wringing over this, but it was a quality win for Cleveland. 2 good wins back to back for them overall.
Yeah, obviously still without Larry Nance Jr., still without Jared Allen, still without Dylan Windler. Kevin Love, we'll talk about, I'm sure, will be an administrator through the weekend. The Cavs did sign a player to a 10-day contract. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name because I have not seen a pronunciation of it yet, nor do I.
I think it's Mfondu Kaganbele, but I could be wrong. So it's Mfondu Kaganbele, but we're going to call him the new guy so we don't insult him by butchering his name.
Yes, until we hear him pronounce it. But he could play Saturday. He's going to sign his 10-day contract on Saturday, maximize his 10 days, and then be with the team through this road trip as they're kind of thin up front right now due to these injuries. But Evan, let's talk about the game. So 129-102, Cleveland outscores Oklahoma City 28-14 in the third quarter, which ultimately became the decisive quarter in the game. They only had a 4-point lead going into the half and then extend that to 18 going into the fourth. Collin Sexton had 27, Darius Garland had 21 and 5, Kevin Love had 18 and 11, Dean Wade had 12, and Isaac Okoro had 15. Every starter in double digits. Taurean Prince had 22 off the bench, and Ty Jerome had 20, as you alluded to, 23 to lead Oklahoma City, who was without, among others, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Baisley and a whole bunch of other folks, as they kind of have a patchwork roster. Evan, my MVP, I'm just going to go Darius Garland. So 21 and 5.
Good pick.
3 assists, moved the ball well, was pretty aggressive in shooting. I thought another really solid game, and a really string of good games for him of late.
No, that's a really good pick. My pick actually, it was either Darius, but my other pick is Taurean Prince for this one, who finished the night with 22 points, 6 assists, 3 boards, and 3 of 5 from 3, 9 of 15 from the field. Like Taurean Prince has played really well in Cleveland's last 2 games, and hopefully he just wasn't playing up to his best because of health, and maybe he's fully healthy now, but with Larry Nance Jr. out probably for a few more games, the Cavs are going to lean on him a lot with the bench unit, especially with Kevin Love back. And I'm just really pleased with the results for Taurean Prince so far.
Yeah, I think he's been good, and we'll see kind of what his future holds. We'll see kind of how the Cavs handle him and what kind of manifest with him going forward. But that's where he's kind of at right now. And again, I think Collin Sexton also should be mentioned in this too. Yeah. 27 points is nothing to sneeze at, but he at least will come up for me in the next 2 categories actually. So Evan, let's go to stat of the night. Play of the night's a little obvious in Sexton's case, so let's just do the one that's got a little more surprise to it. For me, it said he took 10 free throws.
That was actually my other pick, so good choice.
So Collin Sexton, 9 of 10 from the free throw line, was just repeatedly aggressive in getting to the rim and getting inside. Really was dictating where the teams were defending him in a lot of cases. And if he only took 1 3-pointer, and he's going through like this thing he does every year where he's a little hesitant or struggles with his 3-point shot before he finds it again. That's an ebb and flow that can happen sometimes with players. Sexton getting to the line is another way for him to continually to really make an impact and use his speed to his advantage. The Cavs took 24 free throws as a team. Sexton took 10 of them, and he was just really, really good as a scorer in this game, and you truly do love to see it.
No, Sexton was really, really good, and like you said, this is something you have alluded to, that the next step in his game offensively is him using his aggressiveness to get to the line, and this was a good example of it. He really hounded Oklahoma City to get to the free throw line throughout the night, and that's really impressive. My stat of the night is the fact that the Cavs had 25 assists on 35 makes. I know this is a recurring stat for me, but I'm a big proponent of good offensive basketball for this Cleveland team, especially with how bad they've been offensively lately. They're pretty much middle in the pack defensively now. At this point in the season, I think they're 17th in defensive rating, and then they are in the mid to upper 20s in offensive rating, and I think part of it is the fact that the Cavs are healthy, but also they're moving the rock and shooting threes, and 25 assists on 35 makes I'll take any night, especially for a team that sometimes struggles to move the ball like Cleveland does.
All right, so Evan, play of the night. What's yours?
I actually have a few to pick from, so this is actually a tough one, but it was that Taurean Prince pass to Isaac Okoro leading to a 3 in the third quarter. When the great Cavs, the best Cavs beat writer Ashley Bastock and I were on the media call, Isaac shared that the coaching staff wants him to be more aggressive offensively, and we saw a lot of that against Oklahoma City, and his 3-point shot is like just the biggest thing that the Cavs coaching staff really wants him to add to his bread and butter and his repertoire offensively, and you kind of saw it firsthand in plays like that, and Isaac had another double-digit scoring night, so good for him, and that's my pick. What's yours?
It can't be anything else but the Collin Sexton behind the back pass. Can't be anything else other than that. This was Sexton pushing the ball up in transition, and he literally goes around his back to feed. Who's the cutter? I can't even remember because the pass was just so good.
Yeah,
can't even remember, but it doesn't matter. He it might have been Prince. Might have been Hardenstein. I don't know. It was someone. It was a player on the Cleveland Cavaliers, but he did this behind the back pass. Maybe the most creative spur of the moment pass we've ever seen Collin Sexton make. That's probably a little bit hyperbole, but I just can't think of one off the top of my head or racking my brain thinking about it. And just a really, really good play, a really good win, not against a good team. Thunder are bad and, without a lot of good guys.
Cleveland should have won.
Yeah. And that no, go ahead.
No, this is a game they should have won, and they did. Like, sometimes the Cavs drop games like that more often than not, and that's just frustrating. So this was just encouraging to see them pull off that dub.
Yeah, this is they had coming on some rest, and the Thunder on the second half of back-to-back, and they're bad and really banged up. You win games like that. That's I think good for Cleveland to at least do that and take a step forward in that regard. All right, Evan, time to pay some bills. First, we got to tell about our friends at Built Bar. So Built Bar, as you probably know by now, if you're a regular listener, is the best tasting protein bar on the market. They have amazing new flavors, including caramel brownie, cookies and cream, cherry barcia, and apple almond crisp. There's a bunch of other great flavors, including banana bread, mint brownie, double chocolate, and toffee almond. These protein bars are covered in 100% chocolate, and they're soft and easy to chew. You're going to want to try every flavor. I really like the cookies and cream, which has 17 grams of protein, 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 4 grams of net carbs. Right now, get a free Cool Whip purchase. That's while supplies last. And go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next order. Again, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. Also want to tell you about the Locked On Today podcast. Get all the sports news you need in under 20 minutes with the Locked On Today podcast. Host Peter Bukowski updates you on the latest news in every major sport with the help of our local experts. Follow the Locked On Today podcast on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Evan, we're going to talk about some weekend games, but I want us to touch first on a couple health-related stories.
Okay.
I'm spurring this on you, so I apologize, but I realize that we should talk about this because we've talked about it very briefly in terms of Larry Nance Jr., but considering this is our WKYC show, he's one of there's been a lot of Cavs health stuff this week, right? Yep. So you have the Larry Nance Jr. part of it, which unfortunately saw him lose 20 pounds rapidly due to an unexpected non-COVID illness. That's a really big bummer. We'll see exactly when he's going to get back. According to JB Bickerstaff, he is progressing. But I would just say this: I would expect the Cavs to be as cautious as possible with Nance in this case.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think that's also why they signed the new guy. Again, we're not going to butcher his name to a 10-day deal, and they're not going to kick it in until Saturday when the Cavs play the Toronto/Tampa Bay Raptors, and so they have the maximum amount of time possible with the new guy in order to address some of the depth issues they had with Larry out and Jared Allen out as well, because he can play 4 or 5, and he really can't play Kevin Love long term at the 5. But no, this is just a huge bummer for Larry. I'm glad to hear that he is doing better and he'll come back to the court eventually. But the Cavs are always an organization that errs on the side of caution when it comes to injuries, and don't expect him back sooner. Instead, anytime soon at least. The Cavs won't rush him back. They'd rather, have him fully healthy and back at a proper game ready weight instead of just throwing him back out there to the Wolves.
Also, Kevin Love will be in a minutes restriction through the weekend. I think he's going to play the back-to-back right now, but he's going to remain on the minutes restriction. He had 20 minutes a night if he plays. He said Kevin said earlier this week that the first quarter has kind of gotten him every single time. So we'll see kind of how that goes. And lastly, I just want to note that as first reported by Chris Feud of Cleveland.com, some Cavs players and coaches did receive the COVID-19 vaccine doses in late March. It was not mandated by the team, and according to Fedor, some players did not get it. We do not know, nor do I doubt we will know who got it and who did not. JB Bickerstaff also got it, and he's kind of the one who spoke publicly about it. He said he got it before the rest of the team, and actually, I believe, and got a 2-dose vaccine where the players got the Johnson & Johnson one based on availability. The Cavs are now one of several teams that we know that has gotten there. It's the Thunder. I think a bunch of other teams have as well. So just note that I think this is it's a thing that they're going through as well. And there's a lot we don't know, and a lot I actually think would be sort of interesting to dissect. But the NBA, I think, compared to like the WNBPA, which has been very trying to talk up the benefits of the vaccine and stuff, has been sort of interesting to see how these two leagues have handled it differently, even though they're sort of under the same umbrella. But notable that some Cavs have gotten it, and that's a good thing.
No, it really is a good thing, and I think it's encouraging to tell people they see athletes. Like I know the Cleveland baseball team, the MLB has an incentive where if 85% of the team or roster is vaccinated, they're allowed to go out to dinner and have their family travel and stay with them.
Do simple stuff like play video games together. Is one of the things on that as well.
Sit in the dugout without a mask, which I also feel like is a boost for some of those players as well. I just think seeing professional athletes and maybe people you look up to, there are probably people who are still skeptical of the vaccine just because either the efficacy rate or some conspiracies, whether it's fertility or whatnot. Even Paul George saying it shrinks your feet, which is irresponsible as well. Having players like let's just be frank, they're celebrities. Whether you recognize the Cavs or not, they're celebrities. Like they're getting vaccinated. They're also advocating for, I know JB is encouraging people to go out and get vaccinated as well and do their part to make sure we keep everybody safe and healthy. So it's just a good step in the right direction.
All right, so Evan, let's talk a little bit about this weekend. Let's just talk about the Raptors game, because I think sort of interestingly, this game could get the Cavs in position to it's another playoff thing, basically.
Yeah, the Cavs are going to be gunning for that play-in tournament, I think, this month. I really do. And Toronto's, Tampa, whatever you want to call them, they're not very good. Kyle Lowry's questionable. I don't know if he's going to play tomorrow. Rodney Hood, former Cavs Rodney Hood, is questionable as well. And then they have quite a few players out too. But the Raptors are starting to see to the youth movement a little bit, see what they have besides Siakam and Anunoby, and then kind of move forward from there. But if Lowry's out, it makes things interesting for sure. And this Cavs team's probably feeling pretty good about itself right now after 2 quality wins. And I don't know, they're at home. I could see them kind of taking advantage of the situation and beating up on the Toronto Bay Raptors or the Toronto Raptors. I don't know. I'm going to come up with a better nickname at some point. I just know Raptors fans do not like it when I call them the Tampa Raptors. So,
well, I understand that. Toronto is 20-32. Cleveland is 19-32. Both of these teams are off on Friday. Toronto, I think, is definitely in theory the better team, but they've had a really, really weird year. Neither of these teams in the 538 models or any of the early models are above 50% to make the playoffs now. Toronto is certainly a little bit lower and kind of struggling through this a little bit. But this is, again, this will be an interesting game just to see kind of how that also works out. And these two teams last time they played, Collin Sexton and, had some dust ups with with some of their guys, and then you had Siakam reportedly getting in an altercation with Nick Nurse, and last time his teams played, it worked out much better for Cleveland. But Toronto is one of those teams where I think you got to come prepared. Like, it's cliche, but you got to come prepared to compete, compared to win against a team like that and figure that out. It's going to be tricky for Cleveland, no doubt. I think you got some work to do in terms of navigating all of that and kind of figuring out what sort of is going to happen in that regard. But I think they're definitely, they could have some advantages. I think one of the keys to watch will just be how the center minutes work out. One of Toronto's big weaknesses this year has just been its minutes at the center spot. Can Isaiah Hartenstein? Can the new guy? Can
Kevin?
Kevin is functionally playing center when he starts with Dean Wade. Like, how do the Cavs handle the center minutes, and do they get the best of those? Will sort of be interesting to watch there in my mind.
Yeah, I think it'll be center by committee play for the Cavs until at least Jarrett's back. I think he'll be back before Larry, or if Larry happens to be back, I think Larry starts at the 5 with Kevin at the 4, or you start Kevin at the 4 with Larry at the 5. I don't know. The Cavs have a surplus of bigs, but the problem is their quality big men are also on the shelf right now, sans Kevin Love. So, like, Dean Wade's pretty good, but like, you can't expect Dean Wade to play 30 nights on a consistent basis. I feel like he's going to kind of fall apart eventually if the Cavs don't get healthy sooner instead of later, but this is a weird matchup. I think the Cavs could win this one. I don't want to make a definitive bet, but also this feels like this Raptors team, like you said, if the Cavs don't come in prepared, like Nick Nurse is a very, very good coach. He will have this team prepared at least, and it could be an interesting one for sure. Like, I keep saying interesting because it could go either way between Cleveland and Toronto.
Yeah, and I think both these games this weekend, in terms of the schedule and just terms of what the Cavs historically have been, I want to see how the Cavs' energy levels sort of look in these games, and if they can kind of keep them up and progress through them. It'll be sort of an interesting question when you see if the Cavs can kind of do that. But Evan, we got some more bills to pay. Why don't you tell everyone about our next great sponsor?
Well, the Cavs are playing a back-to-back this weekend. If you want to make some quick money off it, check out our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Football might be over, but the NBA and NHL are in full swing. BetOnline even covers awards, TV shows, and reality TV. They have real-time, updated odds and props on almost anything you can imagine. They also have you covered for all the news, scores, and odds. It's the best way to place your bets, and it's free to sign up. So if you're interested, head to their website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit using the promo code LOCKEDON. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts and the exclusive betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get more analysis on the top prospects available in this year's NBA draft with the Locked On NBA Draft Podcast. Scouting reports, draft rumors, mock drafts, and full coverage of March Madness 4 days a week from credentialed draft experts. Follow the Locked On NBA Draft Podcast on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, last segment here. Evan, let's talk about Cavs Pelicans, which is Sunday. For Cleveland, it is the second half of a home back-to-back. For New Orleans, it is the first half of a back-to-back. They are in action on Friday night against Philadelphia. We're recording this before that happens, just so we talk about how the sausage is made a little bit. Again, like, we're recording this later than we normally would, basically like a full day later, but is what it is.
Okay, Evan, I'm going to get me to admit it a second time, Chris. You're mightier than me. Okay, go ahead. Speaking of mighty, Zion Williamson can lower a shoulder and like rip a hole through the chest of most Cavs players.
Yeah, I would need lots of money to have to take a shoulder from Zion.
How much?
Like $1 million, like $500,000.
Really? I do $1 million. I think.
I just want some profit.
Yeah, I mean, the publicity.
I have health insurance, so
yeah, that's true.
I don't want to be famous. That sounds terrible. Or even like famous for like 30 minutes. That sounds absolutely terrible. I would.
Chris and his wife walking through the store, getting some groceries with their masks on because they wear a mask like the rest of Ohio should, and then some little kid's like, "Mommy, it's the Zion guy." And Chris is like sitting with this caved-in rib cage, and he just shakes his head in disgust and just leaves the cart in the middle of the store.
My therapist would really benefit from this more than anyone else. His billing hours would just go through the roof. But Evan, I'm going to run you through a couple of things in terms of where things are right now with both of these teams, because neither of the teams are playing well.
The Pelicans are struggling, dude. Besides Zion, they are struggling, and Brandon Ingram. But Brandon Ingram's hurt.
And he's playing on Friday, but then Lonzo Ball is out of the lineup, and Eric Bledsoe, has like the worst field goal percentage since the All-Star break, like at the rim, like 43% or something like that. Last 2 weeks, here's how these teams look in terms of offensive rating, defensive rating, and net rating. Cleveland, 28th in net rating, 28th in offense and 13th in defense. They are 11th against in terms of against the spread. And then the New Orleans Pelicans, 26 in net rating, 0.6 per 100 possessions, better than Cleveland. So there's not a whole lot there. They are 17th in offense and 28th in defense. They are 26th against the spread, underperforming by 6.3 points per game or per average or whatever. So, Evan, this is I think a winnable game, and to me it is the more interesting game of the weekend, not just because of the Zion factor, but I think it's because of Cleveland is going to be in the second half of back-to-back and against a struggling team. I am pumping the brakes very heavily on any playoff stuff. Like, I am slamming the brakes. Like, if the speed limit is 25, I'm going 10, But I think,
and if your gas tank's at 3/4 full, you go ahead and refill.
Yeah, I'm not in a rush. I'm not
leaning into the old man Manning bit a bit here.
Yeah, I gotta stop a bit, get some stretching in. But I just think this is a game that if they perform well or win or whatever, and it's like sort of like functions in a way that's like, oh, this team sort of clearly knows what it is right now, and even with all these injuries stuff, I will think that the Cavs have actually figured something out. And that's too much pressure put on one game. It's more about this weekend set, but this is the second half of a back-to-back. We'll see who's available and all of that, but this is like one of those games where I think we will learn something in terms of what kind of temperament this Cavs team sort of has as it kind of rounds towards, the last like month or so of the season.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It really does depend on who's available for both teams on the back-to-back. Like, Lonzo could still not play. Brandon Ingram could still not play. I don't know. The Pelicans could those are two key pieces other than Zion, but I really question David Griffin's team building when I look at this roster as well. But it's also on the Cavs side of things, too. Like, I know Kevin Love probably will play in the back-to-back with his cap being 20 minutes, but stranger things have happened. Kevin played a lot against Detroit, then he barely played against Philly, and then he was sidelined for almost the majority of the first half of the season. I don't know. I think maybe the Cavs should rest Kevin in this back-to-back, especially if he has to take turns defending Zion with Dean Wade. Like, this is going to be a really tricky matchup because Zion is a phenomenal player, and he's also going to be exploiting a position of weakness for the Cavs right now, just in terms of just health and availability. And this could get weird fast. And, like, if Lonzo plays and then Bledsoe plays, like, I know that's terrible spacing wise, but they're both good defensively. I think that can give Garland and Sexton some problems. And then you're probably asking Okoro to do a bit more offensively too. Like, this is a recipe that could be for disaster for Cleveland as well. And yeah, I don't know. I wrote a piece for Forbes about how the Cavs could be vying for a play-in spot, and I think that's okay if they do that because they're 3.5 back of Chicago heading into tonight's matchups. But it's interesting to think like what will happen, but I don't know. The Pelicans aren't playing well. I think Stan Van Gundy wasn't a good hire by Griff. I think a lot of the moves Griff made in New Orleans have been questionable at best. And if it weren't for the Anthony Davis trade and being handed Zion Williamson, like, I think people would be questioning the legitimacy of David Griffin as a general manager because he's riding off the coattails of success with the Cavs and LeBron. But that's a story for another day. But this is going to be an interesting matchup again. This is just an interesting weekend slate for the Cavs. Like, two not-so-great teams going against another not-so-great team in Cleveland. That's the other not-so-great team. So it's just going to be an interesting time overall. Like, it could get ugly fast both nights.
Evan, I'm going to ask you this as we get towards the end of the show here. So you wrote about this at Forbes, and I've been thinking a lot about the playoff stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's no like model that gives the Cavs like a very good chance. Like the ESPN BPI one, the basketball power index gives them like a 0.1% chance. The 538 one is about the same, at least in terms of like the Raptor player predictions, which is like the analytics thing and everything like that. Yeah. I do not think that the Cavs are a likely playoff team. I think if you're looking at talking about this seriously, it's more likely that it's next year. I suspect the end of the season is going to get a little rough just based on the schedule. Assuming some of the teams they play figured out.
Things come back to normal. They play Miami, Portland, Phoenix, Dallas, Boston, Indiana. Like, those are all, and Brooklyn as well. Like, those are all good teams.
So I just want to ask you, where are you at on this? Because we haven't actually even really, you and I even privately haven't really talked about this, and I just want to know where you stand on this.
Well, I said at the beginning of the year, I think the Cavs could be a play-in team, and I still think they'll flirt with that identity a little bit, just with how, like, easy some of the matchups they have in April are, like just in terms of things. But these are also losable games to the Cavs. I think, I forget who it was, but somebody pointed out the fact that the Cavs also are on the road for a lot of these games and traveling in a COVID restricted environment, even if they're vaccinated. Like that's tough. And this has been a tough year probably for the team as well, just in terms of how soul sucking some of these losses are. Like you and I saw JB after some of the post game pressers, like he looked flabbergasted that the Cavs went out there and performed the way they did. Like the Cavs could drop a few games here and there, but like I think just with how like easy the schedule's getting, and like I think Kevin Love and Matthew Dellavedova coming back are huge for this team. Like the Cavs look so much better with the backup point guard playing, and like the natural spacing Kevin Love provides with his like 6 to 8 threes a night is huge as well. Eventually you get Larry back, eventually you get Jarrett back. I know Jalen Windler hasn't been great, but he's still a piece in this rotation as well. Like Dean Wade playing well is a big thing too. Like the Cavs are kind of finding a little bit of swagger, and I think maybe they're gonna be in like that 7, 8, 9 range, I think, in terms of draft order. And they're gonna be kind of like nipping at the heels of Chicago for the better part of this season, just to like lock up that 10th seed. Like who knows? Maybe Orlando makes a weird push as well but they've just kind of been one of my more disappointing teams this year. But like I don't know. I don't think the Cavs will make the play-in tournament necessarily. Like you said, a lot of models out there say they have a at best 3% chance of making it. I think that's what the Ringer has them at 2%. So of making the play-in tournament, like the odds are slim, but I also have a little bit of faith that the Cavs might be able to pull it off. How about you?
I'm not maybe not at like 2%, but I think it's pretty low. But I think what's interesting just to think about is that if there is a real push that is going to happen, and we're going to get like 2 weeks of stuff, because here's what the rest of April looks like. After Sunday, Charlotte, at home versus Golden State, at Chicago, at Detroit, home versus Chicago, at Charlotte, at Washington, at Toronto, home versus Orlando, home versus Washington, and then that ends the month of April. There's not like any like great teams in that stretch. Like nope. Right, like the Warriors are kind of like a fringe playoff team out there. Like Charlotte doesn't have LaMelo, but they're currently like in the upper half of the East, but I don't know how great they really are. All these other teams are sort of fighting, and then where it gets really dicey is May. So it's Miami, Phoenix, Portland, Dallas twice, Indiana, Boston, Washington, and Brooklyn. And maybe Brooklyn at the end of the year is resting folks starters, yeah. But every team before that has something real to play for. And you know, Miami just like dusted the Cavs not long ago. I think how the rest of April goes, I think I just want to say for the record that I do not think this is a play-in tournament team. I think next year we can talk about it. We'll see kind of how the draft and everything sort of goes, and we'll see how healthy they can get. But I think from April 10th through April 30th will be a stretch of games these next 20 days, and it's going to be a very busy 20 days for the team. I do and although there is only one back aside from this weekend, there's 2 back-to-backs in there, which is less than normal. But I do think that this stretch of games is just going to tell us a lot, and I'm kind of excited to dive into it because it is at least interesting in a way that we have not always had with this team, and covering them and getting something at least kind of interesting is a win for us.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It's sometimes it's soul sucking to cover this team. That's a little dramatic, but either way, like with every ugly loss, I'm just like, well, got to figure out something to talk about. At least I think the Cavs will be interesting because they'll be playing teams of similar caliber of them for at least the majority of April. Like Golden State's probably going to be one of the better teams of that docket just because of how good Steph Curry and Andrew Wiggins is playing well for them, and Draymond's still good even though he can't play offensively as well anymore. Like I don't know. It's just interesting to see how the Warriors are currently constructed, but yeah, like I think the Cavs have a shot in every game in April. And then, like you said, reality will be a sobering thing come May, and then we'll really have an idea probably towards the end of April, like, okay, is this Cavs team for real or not? Because they could also very well drop a few games. They'll lose it in a Cavs way, if you know, you know. So, like, the most Cavs way possible. So that's just kind of where I'm at. I have a little more faith. I've also been kind of banging this drum, them being a play-in team for a little while now. I think that we'd more so be having this conversation if Kevin Love was healthy and people wore their masks, so Kevin Porter Jr. was a Cavalier. So that's just kind of where I'm at.
I'm also over the Kevin Porter Jr. discourse. People act like the Cavs lost prime wilt, and they're acting like it was like that whole discourse is just becoming
his stats are impressive. To look at his shooting numbers and his volume of attempts, and it kind of clicks together really fast on why he's looking so good for Houston. But It is what
There's
it
also
is.
just a lot there that is just
Yeah, there's a
we
lot
could
more to
exist.
unpack, and the Cavs, I think, did the right thing by sending him to Houston to be with John Lucas. So it is what it is. But if you guys wore your masks, COVID might not have been a thing. Just
Anyway,
saying. Anyways, I think that's going to do it for us today. I hope everyone has a good weekend. Chris, you got any big plans?
sleeping.
There you go. Chris is a grumpy elf today. I was gonna wear the same shirt as him actually. If you're watching on WKYC, I have that exact shirt he has on right now. It's a good shirt, by the way.
What Evan doesn't know is right before this is our take two on this. My desk drawer, like on the front of my desk, like fell out, and I don't know why. And I've just been staring at it the whole time. It's driving me a little nuts.
Your house is haunted, but why don't we wrap up here, Chris? You can clean up your
Yep.
desk and you can get to bed and everything else. But for those of you checking us on WKOC for the first time, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We have a podcast 5 days a week, anywhere you can find a podcast in audio format, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Odyssey, you name it. If it's Apple, especially give us a 5-star review. We're going to do a better job of giving you shout outs, but we'll be back Monday with some fun stuff. We have Jackson Frank coming on the show. Chris is pointing in to talk about Jalen Suggs and Gonzaga. Go ahead.
And I just want to tell. Well, I have some other plugs to make for other pods, but you finish up here.
Well, no, then I have Justin Rowan coming on the show as well because Chris needs the night off for his little COVID vaccine because Chris might not be as mighty as me once he's humbled by the great.
Well, that's
Pfizer
not even
vaccine.
what. Yeah, I am more mighty than you, buddy. But you know.
Anyways.
Anyway, I also want to tell people if you want more Cleveland sports content, Locked On Indians with Jeff Ellis and Locked On Browns with Jeff Floyd. Go check out those podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. And guys, the WNBA draft is next week. And I just want to say the Locked On Women's Basketball podcast does a fantastic job covering all of women's basketball. Go check out that podcast. Howard Megdal, Eric Ayala. There's a whole bunch of Lindsey Gibbs. There's a bunch of great people on that podcast. So go check it out, subscribe, and hop on the W train because it's a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to write a big Rockers look back story this summer, and maybe we'll talk about it on this pod if I'm able to pull it off. I'm trying to speak us into the universe a little bit.
There you go. I'm gonna grab me Stranger Things Indiana Fever jersey. I'm feeling the vibe.
Oh, absolutely! Those are fire. The Liberty mint jerseys.
Oh, those are great too. The mint and copper look. Ooh, such a good color combo.